let's get this straight. Sisyphus.
Sisyphus.
Or repeat it, Sisyphus.
Sisyphus.
And Sisyphean. Have you ever heard of Sisyphean task? Like a monumental task that's impossible, futile, unable to overcome it. So here's something for you to ponder. The greatness of a man is directly in proportion to his flaws. So the greater you are, the more flawed you are. And Sisyphus was a very great man. He was the king of ancient Corinth during Grecian times. And his people knew that he was a flawed man, but he was a good leader too, so they kind of looked the other way. His flaws were of the carnal type. He liked to chase women, he liked to drink, he liked to eat fine food, but he did have the best interests of his people at heart. He had another characteristic, though, that worried his people a little bit more, which was that he was very arrogant towards the gods of the time. And he kind of looked at the gods as no better than mortals. After all, Zeus was a woman chaser, and he kidnapped and forced women. He dressed up as a swan to capture Leda, which Sisyphus thought was pretty ridiculous. He kind of looked at the gods as more characters to laugh at. He liked to follow their soap operas, and he looked at them as something he could get a benefit out of. In Grecian times, just as in now, information is power. And Sisyphus had a good little piece of information on Zeus. He had just happened one night to observe Zeus kidnap the daughter of the god of the rivers, Aesop. And Corinth didn't have a good source of clean water. The Corinthian people worked very hard every day to go out and get water and bring it back. So he called a meeting with Aesop one night in the dark during a time that Zeus couldn't observe them from Mount Olympus. And he cut a deal with Aesop. He said, I'll let you know where your daughter is if you give the city of Corinth a fresh water spring. So they shook hands on it and cut a deal. And Corinth got its spring. Aesop got his daughter back. And Sisyphus was a big hero of Corinth. Everyone was singing his praises. But not for long. It didn't take Zeus very long to figure out who had betrayed him. And out of anger, he rashly ordered Persephone to come out of Hades. She was the goddess of the underworld, and bring Sisyphus back to the underworld and hold him captive there. Well, the people of Corinth were a little bit confused because he was smiling and his eyes were twinkling as Persephone kidnapped him, and even his own wife was confused. Before he left, he asked her to dance on his grave once he had descended into the underworld. And she always obeyed him, but she thought it was a strange order. Once he got down into Hades, he began to complain bitterly to Persephone. My wife, she's not respecting me, she's dancing on my grave. So Persephone was watching the whole scene from down under in Hades, and she was just perplexed by it herself, and she was about to send Sisyphus back up to scold his wife, when out of his toga he pulled a rope and he tied up Persephone, and he made her captive in her own Hades and escaped back to the upper worlds. Again, he was even bigger hero, because during the time it took the gods to figure out just what had happened, there was no death on Earth at all, no death of humans, no death of animals, and all of this thanks to Sisyphus. Well, Sisyphus was really making Zeus look bad. I mean, his image needed a big overhaul. So he got together with his advisors to figure out some way to punish Sisyphus. And they came up with a Sisyphean task. They condemned him for eternity to roll this huge boulder up a hill, only to have it roll back and hit him over and over again. And Sisyphus, he was just devastated. He was angry all the time. He cursed the gods. He cursed his family for not coming to rescue him. He was constantly stuck either in the past, remembering his former life of glory and watching that boulder roll down the hill like his former life slip out of his hands, or thinking about the future, better days to come. And he was never really in the moment, never really paying attention to the present. One day, after about 100 years of rolling that boulder up and down the hill, he became so tired, the hatred had almost eaten his soul away, that he kind of let go, and there were no more thoughts in his head at all. And he heard something strange. He heard the song of a bird, and it was beautiful. And he thought to himself, I think that's always been there, but I've just never noticed it. And on his way down the hill, he stopped and he saw a beautiful plump bird in a nest, and she was happy and shining. She just had a simple nest. She didn't need a castle or a citadel. And she was sitting on something. She was sitting on 3 eggs. And suddenly he was filled with hope. Here was some purpose to life. As he went up and down the hill, he could watch the bird and the eggs. And he noticed too, as he was going down the hill, this was some reprieve. He wasn't pushing anymore, and he could feel the wind on his face. And that had probably always been there too, but he'd just forgotten to notice it. So he experienced a little bit of happiness and started to live more in the present. And one day, as he was coming down the hill, he saw something going on in the nest. A chick was coming out, an egg was hatching. And he watched, he didn't realize before, but the nest was kind of on an angle, and the chick began to slide, 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 and his heart was in his throat. Was, oh no, this little chick's life is going to be futile too. It's going to be born no sooner than to die. But just as it got to the edge of the nest, it stopped, because that bird had been very clever and built an embankment around the nest. She fortified it so that nothing could fall out. But he went to it and he straightened it out with the mother bird's permission, so that didn't happen to any other birds. And he went to the mother bird and he said, my friend, thank you. You've inspired me. You've brought me into the moment. This is the first time since Zeus cursed me that I could actually think about what to do about my situation, and I have an idea. So he waited at night until Zeus was most likely drunk and bedded down with a nymph. And he began to build his own embankment at the top of that hill and a trapdoor. He didn't have a lot of material to work with, but for the first time he realized that those 100 years had not been futile. He'd actually developed an inhuman strength in those 100 years that allowed him, in a very short period of time, to build an embankment and a trapdoor. And he, with the mother bird's permission, moved the nest, and he made a saw out of stone, and he began to cut that tree trunk. He didn't cut it so that it would fall down, but he would cut it so that a mighty push would cause it to fall. And then he, for the last time, pushed that stone up the hill, and it went through the trap door, and it worked as designed and fell down. But he didn't have good materials to work with, and it began buckling, so he ran down the hill to the tree, and he gave the tree a mighty push, and the trap door remained closed, and he had conquered Zeus's curse. And he knew something, he had wisdom that even the gods didn't have. He knew that a life, no matter how great or small, every life has meaning. One just had to wake up and perceive it. In the 100 years that he had been pushing that boulder up and down the hill, all his contemporaries of Corinth had passed away, but their ancestors remembered him and watched him and rooted for him. And before, he had been the kind of leader that people had to look past his faults, but now the people of Corinth actually respected him for what he had overcome and what he'd accomplished. And this Zeus did not have.